I refreshed the page 17 times. Not because my internet was lagging, it wasn't. Every pixel of that photo loaded perfectly. Every time. Same colors, same smile, same caption that made my throat burn a little harder with each pass. But I kept hitting refresh like it might change. Like I might have hallucinated it the first 16 times. It didn't change. The post was still there. Her. In a bikini I'd never seen before. Perched on the shoulders of another man, arms spread wide, like she was flying. Like she was proud of it. Like she wanted me to see it. The man, of course, was Wyatt. The same Wyatt she swore I had nothing to worry about. Just a friend from college who always sent laughing emojis and late-night Spotify links. The one who totally respected our marriage. The same guy whose name I had to pretend didn't make my skin crawl every time it popped up on her screen. And now she was half naked on his shoulders, mid-laugh, her hair dripping wet down his back like they'd just come out of a romantic scene in a movie. I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I want to admit. And then I looked at the timestamp. Posted 11 minutes ago. That means she took that picture, or at least uploaded it, while I was at home unclogging the shower drain. With her gloves. Because she hates touching gross stuff. I didn't even hear my own voice when I said, okay, so that's what we're doing now. But here's what I haven't told you yet. I gave her an ultimatum. Not in an aggressive, shouty way. Not the way people accuse you of when they say you're trying to control me. I just said what I meant. I told her that if she went on that trip, that specific trip, the one with Wyatt, it would be the beginning of something neither of us could undo. She rolled her eyes. Said I was being dramatic. Said it was a group trip, that I was blowing things up again, that nothing would happen. And when I pushed just a little further, when I told her how off it all felt, how Wyatt's name was always floating in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear, she laughed. Laughed. And said, "You really think I'd ruin our marriage over a weekend in the mountains?" I didn't know how to answer that. But I do now. Because I just checked the comments. Her best friend commented, "This pic is illegal." And Wyatt replied, "Let's hope not. I'd serve life gladly." Corinne liked that one. It's funny, not, haha, funny, but broken kind of funny, how quickly a photo can rewrite your entire understanding of a relationship. It wasn't the pose. It wasn't even the fact that they were physically close. It was her expression. She wasn't just smiling. She looked free, unbothered. Like the person who used to look at me that way had officially moved her spotlight. And maybe you're thinking, well, Dale, why didn't you just trust her? Because I did. Too much. For too long. Even when she came home late and said she lost track of time. Even when she shut her phone off for a whole weekend because she needed a break from screens. Even when she started sleeping with one AirPod in. You don't connect the dots until you're staring at the completed picture. And it's a selfie of your wife in a bikini on another man's shoulders. No filter. Just truth. I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I didn't even message her. I just sat there, in the dark, in the same hoodie I'd worn for 2 days, feeling like someone had peeled the skin off my chest and exposed every raw nerve to the air. It's crazy how you can live in the same apartment as someone, sleep next to them, fold their laundry, make their stupid green smoothies, and still not realize they've emotionally packed their bags and left weeks ago. I wish I could tell you I did something bold right then. Like called her out in front of everyone. Or booked a flight to the cabin and confronted them like a movie scene with snow and yelling. But the truth? I walked to the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" Then I brushed my teeth. Because that's what you do, right? You try to stay normal even when your whole identity is cracking like an ice-covered windshield under pressure. The silence that followed was louder than anything I'd ever felt. I didn't hear from her that night. Not a single text. Not even a, "Hey, made it safe," or a lazy "good night," the kind she used to send out of habit. It was like I had evaporated. Like I was just unnecessary. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her on his shoulders. I saw her tilting her head, laughing like I used to make her laugh. My thoughts became cruel, wondering what they did after the photo, where they went, whether she wore that silk robe she once claimed only felt right at home. I hate that my mind does this. I hate that it's graphic. I hate that I imagine her lying about everything, even when she swore she never would. The next morning, I checked again. More posts. More tagged photos. A video now, someone had captured a moment where Wyatt carried her through a stream, her arms around his neck, both of them laughing while a friend behind the camera shouted, "Just like the old days." What old days? The ones she said were meaningless? The ones she said never involved anything physical? She once told me she and Wyatt barely talked after college. Now he's carrying her bridal style through mountain water while she giggles and clings to him like a prize. That was the first time I felt something shift in my chest, not just sadness, but rage. A slow brewing storm. But still, I didn't reach out. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I saw. I wanted her to wonder whether I was watching, whether I cared. Which, of course, I did. Too much. Then something even worse happened. I got a message from my sister. "Hey, everything okay between you two? Just saw Corinne's pics in." I don't want to assume anything, but it looks kinda off. Off. Off didn't even begin to describe it. I didn't answer. I just put my phone down and stared at the ceiling. I knew once other people started noticing, it wasn't just in my head anymore. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't me being insecure. It was real, public, obvious, and humiliating. Later that day, I got a text. Not from Corinne. From Luna, the one who posted the first story. She wrote, "Hey Dale. I just wanted you to know I didn't mean anything by tagging her. I thought you were okay with the trip. Please don't be mad at me." That was it. That broke me. Because if Luna, a party girl who once got banned from an Airbnb for stealing their toaster, thought I wouldn't be okay with it, then what the hell was Corinne thinking? At this point, it wasn't just betrayal. It was willful, calculated. A choice she made fully aware of the consequences. And the worst part? She didn't care enough to lie. She was silent. Blissfully, completely silent. I didn't want to be that guy, the emotional mess of a husband sitting at home with his cat and his regrets, spiraling on Reddit about his crumbling marriage. But here I am. Because when someone chooses to humiliate you, not in secret, but out loud, in front of mutual friends, in front of the whole digital world, you either break or you write. So I'm writing. Because I need someone, anyone, to understand that I saw the moment my wife stopped being mine. And it wasn't through a fight, or a message, or a long-winded goodbye. It was through a photo. A single photo that told me, in the clearest way possible, "You don't matter anymore." By the third day, something in me had gone numb. I wasn't pacing around anymore. I wasn't checking her Instagram every 15 minutes, and I wasn't replaying her voice in my head the way I did that first night. I was just stuck, emotionally benched. It's hard to explain. It's not that I forgave her, or that I stopped caring. It's more like my brain put the pain in a freezer just so I could function. So I could eat something, answer a few work emails, or pretend I still lived in a version of reality where this wasn't actually happening. But then came the folder. Let me back up. Corinne isn't the most organized person. She's chaotic in that charming way people romanticize. You know the type. Leaves half-drunk tea mugs on bookshelves, forgets where she put her keys, but remembers every lyric to every emo song from 2009. But occasionally, when she's feeling productive, she'll sync everything to our shared cloud account so she doesn't lose photos. I'd forgotten all about it. Until I got a ping on my laptop. New folder added, Colorado Weekend Dizzy. I stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. Hovered over the notification with my mouse for 10 full seconds, wondering what kind of emotional landmine I was about to step on. I knew I shouldn't open it. I knew it. But I did. The folder wasn't full of group photos like she claimed the trip was about. No, there were maybe 3 blurry shots with girls. The rest? Selfies. Videos. Smiling snaps of her and Wyatt. There was one where she was wearing one of his hoodies, looking up at him with that half smile she used to give me after inside jokes. Another video, this one only 5 seconds, showed them in the kitchen of the cabin. She was holding a wine glass, he had a spatula in his hand, and they were dancing to some old pop song like they were the only 2 people in the world. But the worst part? The audio. In one of the clips, she clearly says, "You still make me feel 17, you know that?" And Wyatt just looks at her with this stupid grin and goes, "That's because we never finished what we started." I paused the video there. I couldn't go further. She didn't mean for me to see that. That folder syncs automatically when she forgets to toggle off the cloud backup on her phone. She probably still doesn't realize I have access to it. Which means, and this is the part that made my heart pound against my ribs like it wanted out, she didn't just lie. She felt safe lying. She thought I was so harmless, so soft, so passive, that she didn't even feel the need to cover her tracks. And maybe she was right. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't called her, hadn't confronted her, hadn't even told a friend. I was just letting the whole thing play out like a tragic movie I wasn't allowed to pause. Why? Because part of me was still hoping this was all a misunderstanding. That she'd come home, wrap her arms around me, cry, Tell me she got lost in the moment and nothing happened and that we could rebuild. But that video? Her words? That folder? That was a goodbye in slow motion. The kind where the person leaving doesn't even bother to pack. Later that evening, I opened our kitchen drawer looking for a spoon and noticed something strange. Her drawer, the one she kept her vitamins, hair ties, and that weird lip balm that smelled like minty clay, was mostly empty. Just a few strays left behind. That's when I started checking the rest of the apartment. Her side of the closet? Lighter. Not empty, but enough to notice. Bathroom drawer? Toothbrush gone. Razor too. She hadn't just gone on a trip. She'd started moving out. Silently. Strategically. Like someone easing out of a chair, hoping you wouldn't hear it creak. I sat down on the couch and stared at nothing for a long time. My cat, Edgar, jumped up beside me, curled against my leg like he could sense everything crashing. I didn't pet him. I just whispered, "She's already gone, isn't she?" Like he had the answer. He didn't, obviously, but I did. And the worst part? I wasn't even angry anymore. Just tired. Just hollow. There was a note on the fridge I hadn't seen until then, scribbled in her messy handwriting on a yellow sticky. Don't forget, water the aloe, pay the gas bill, and check if my charger's behind the couch. No, I love you. No, call me. No, miss you. Just reminders. Like I was already a roommate. Like we were winding down a lease. I walked to the bedroom and pulled open her bottom drawer. Buried underneath a stack of old scarves was the one thing I never expected to see again. The anniversary gift I gave her 2 years ago, a silver chain with a small engraved compass, pointing north. She used to wear it every day. Said it reminded her that home always had direction. It was still in its box. Untouched. She hadn't worn it in months. I held it in my hand and finally allowed myself to feel it. Not just the betrayal, but the truth. That this wasn't a bad week or a misunderstanding. This was the slow death of a bond one of us stopped feeding a long time ago. And I was the only one left trying to resuscitate the ghost of it. She returned on a Tuesday evening 4 days after the trip ended. No warning. No apology. Just the dull clatter of her keys in the lock like nothing had happened. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a plate of uneaten leftovers in front of me, lit by the soft yellow of the stovetop light. My first instinct was to pretend I hadn't noticed her walk in. But she didn't give me the chance. She breezed through the door like a guest arriving late to a party she didn't want to be at. Her suitcase rolled in behind her like a tail she hadn't quite learned how to cut off. Sunglasses still on her head. Skin tanned. Smile fake. "Hey," she said. That was it. Just, hey. No eye contact. No hug. No, I missed you. She tossed her purse onto the counter, slipped off her sandals, and opened the fridge like this was any other day. I stared at her, waiting. Waiting for guilt. For an explanation. For something real. But instead she pulled out the oat milk and asked, "Did the cat puke on the rug again?" I saw fur on my yoga mat. That's when I realized it. Whatever version of her I had built up in my head, the woman who would crumble into tears the second she saw me, who would realize what she'd done and fall apart right there in the doorway, begging for a chance to fix it. That woman didn't exist. At least not anymore. She wasn't hiding anything because she wasn't ashamed of it. And maybe that's what made it worse. I let the silence sit, heavy between us. She finally looked up from the fridge and blinked like she was surprised I hadn't responded. "What?" she asked, annoyed. "You're mad I didn't text more? I told you I needed space on this trip." "Corinne," I said, and it felt strange, calling her by name like I didn't recognize her anymore. "Did you sleep with him?" The question hung there like smoke. For a second, she didn't answer. She just stared at me, lips pressed in a line, head tilted slightly like she was deciding whether I was worth the truth or not. Then, without flinching, she said, "Dale, don't start this." That was her answer. Not a no. Not a yes. Just a redirect. A dismissal. Like my feelings were some inconvenient bump in the road she didn't have time to deal with. I stood up. My voice was shaking, but I tried to keep it level. "I saw the photos. I heard what you said in that video. The cloud folder synced. You forgot to disconnect it." Her face froze. Finally, something cracked. She wasn't expecting that. For the first time since she walked through the door, I saw a real fear flicker in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of being caught. Of the consequences. She set the oat milk down like it had become radioactive. Crossed her arms. "You went through my stuff?" "No. You uploaded it to our shared drive." "That's not me snooping. That's you being careless." She didn't respond. Just stood there, blinking fast, her mouth working silently like she wanted to form a defense and couldn't. I asked you not to go, I said. I told you what it would mean. And you went anyway. And then you lied. I didn't lie, she snapped. I said it was a group trip. It was a group trip. With private dances and inside jokes and him carrying you around like a trophy? She looked down. Her jaw tightened. You don't get it, Dale. No, I said louder now. You're right. I don't get it. I don't get how someone goes from I love you to I'm going to flirt with my old flame in the woods for a week and hope my husband just gets over it. She rubbed her temples. God, you always twist things. This is exactly why I didn't want to talk about it. Because the truth is inconvenient? No, because you're always playing the victim, she shouted. You never take responsibility for how boring everything got. You live in spreadsheets and cat memes, Dale. I needed something. I needed to feel alive again. I stepped back like she slapped me. Not because it was a surprise, but because hearing it out loud made it real. You could have told me that, I whispered. I shouldn't have to ask for electricity, Dale. It should just be there. I didn't say anything after that. I couldn't. She gathered herself, grabbed a glass from the shelf, poured herself some water, and took it to the bedroom like we hadn't just shattered something sacred in the space between us. I stood there alone in the kitchen for 20 minutes, trying to decide if that conversation was the end or just another beginning I didn't want. But deep down, I already knew. Something fundamental had changed, and not just in her. Something in me had gone missing too. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I laid on the couch with a blanket that smelled like her perfume and a sick feeling in my gut that maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to understand what it meant to be alone, even with someone right down the hall. 2 days passed. 2 whole days of walking past each other like ghosts in our own apartment. She made coffee, scrolled on her phone, folded laundry, all while pretending like the air between us wasn't stiff with betrayal. I kept expecting her to say something, anything, a question, a comment. Even a fight would have meant she cared enough to react. But nothing. She moved through our space like she was already gone, like I was just part of the furniture she hadn't decided what to do with yet. I didn't push. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I'd already heard the truth. It came in fragments, in her silence, her deflections, her tired sighs when I entered the room. The damage was done. I was just too pathetic to stop hoping for a rewind button that didn't exist. Then came the email. Not one she sent, one she received. She'd forgotten to log out of her laptop. It was late at night. She was in the shower. Her laptop lid was halfway open on the couch, Netflix still running in a corner tab. I glanced at the screen out of habit, muscle memory more than intention, and saw the notification slide across the corner. Wyatt P. sent you a private snap. My stomach turned. She had her Snapchat notifications synced to her Gmail, and she'd forgotten to mute them, or change the password, or, I don't know, care. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But something about the way she walked past me all week, untouched, unbothered, untouchable, had chipped away at the guilt I normally carried like a second skin. So I clicked. I didn't go digging. I just opened what was already in front of me. What I found wasn't just confirmation. It was a blueprint of the alternate life she'd been building. Flirty snaps from Wyatt. Photos from the cabin that never made it to Instagram. Ones where they were curled up under a blanket on a wooden porch swing, faces lit only by firelight. Voice notes. He told her she still had the best laugh on earth. Said she deserved someone who sees the light in her without asking her to dim it. And then, a saved snap, probably by accident. Her, whispering, he still doesn't know, but I think I'm ready. I closed the tab like it burned my fingers. The world blurred. I sat there for a long time, trying not to vomit, trying not to scream, trying not to throw her laptop across the room just to make the proof go away. But it wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was how easy she made it look. This wasn't some moment of weakness. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice she had rehearsed, a path she had already begun to walk. And all the while, I was sitting on the couch next to her, rubbing her back, offering her comfort she didn't even ask for anymore. She came out of the shower, her towel wrapped around her like a toga, steam trailing behind her like smoke after a fire. She didn't notice the laptop. She didn't even glance at me. She said, "Can you grab some almond milk tomorrow? We're out." That's what she said. That was the sentence I got after finding out she was planning to leave me. After finding out she was already halfway gone. I nodded. Like a coward. "Yeah," I said. "Sure." I went into the kitchen and turned on the sink to drown out the noise of my breathing. Something snapped in me that night. I don't mean dramatically. Not in a movie ending kind of way. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was just a switch. The one that flips when a part of you finally gives up on being loved the way you deserve. I didn't sleep again. Instead, I sat on the floor of the hallway outside the bedroom and stared at the closed door. She'd locked it. Not accidentally. Intentionally. She had never done that before. Around 3 a.m., I started gathering things. Not hers. Mine. Not because I was leaving yet, but because I needed a piece of control, even if it was just sorting through the chaos she left behind in the wake of her silence. I found a photo album under the bed. The old kind. Printed photos, handwritten captions. Our first year. Her smile was different then. Warmer. Real. There was a photo of us at Lake Monroe, standing ankle-deep in the water. She was holding my hand like she didn't want to lose it. I put the album back and walked to the closet. In the back corner was a duffel bag she hadn't touched in months. I opened it. Inside were folded clothes, my old hoodie, a pair of jeans she said didn't fit her style anymore, and a small box. The box was light blue, the kind you get from jewelry stores. I opened it slowly. Inside was the bracelet I gave her on our second anniversary, the one she cried over. Said she'd never take off. It was still shiny, still perfect, still untouched. And suddenly I realized, this wasn't a woman who forgot how to love me. This was a woman who chose not to, who made peace with the idea of hurting me long before I even sensed a storm. I put the bracelet back, zipped the bag, and whispered to no one. She's gone, and I think she likes it that way. It happened the following Thursday, 5 days after she got back. 5 days of quiet, of passive-aggressive silence, of pretending everything was normal when nothing felt normal anymore. She still hadn't mentioned Wyatt, hadn't brought up the trip, hadn't said a single word that acknowledged the earthquake that cracked open our home. And I had let it slide. I had folded into myself, the way I always do. I'd cooked dinner twice, washed the sheets, fed the cat, even left almond milk in the fridge like some pathetic tribute to domestic peace. But that night, something in me cracked. She came in late from work drinks. Her eyeliner was a little too perfect, her laugh just a little too sharp as she kicked her heels off at the door. I was sitting on the arm of the couch with the TV paused, a frozen sitcom smile staring at the room like it knew something I didn't. Corinne looked at me for a moment, caught off guard that I was awake. She opened her mouth to say something, probably to toss out a lazy excuse about a delayed Uber or how the girls wanted just one more round. But I beat her to it. We need to talk. She froze. For once, she was the one unsure. What's wrong? I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of the question hit me like a slap. She asked it so casually, like the weeks of betrayal and the tension thick enough to slice with a kitchen knife had somehow gone unnoticed. I know everything, I said. I've seen the photos, heard the audio, read the messages. I know you weren't just catching up on that trip, Corinne. Her smile flickered. Died. You went through my stuff again? No. You left your life wide open. You forgot to cover your tracks, like you always used to. Only now you don't care enough to hide it. She stepped further into the room, tension crawling across her shoulders like armor. So what, Dale? What do you want from me? Do you want a confession? Some kind of sob story? You think if I cry hard enough, it'll reset everything? I want the truth, I said, even if it guts me. She didn't sit down. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes cold. Fine. You want the truth? Why, it made me feel seen. Like I mattered. Like I wasn't some afterthought in a relationship built on routine and your comfort zone. My hands curled into fists against the cushions, knuckles white. I never treated you like an afterthought. No, you just stopped showing up. Emotionally. Physically. You checked out a long time ago, Dale. You just didn't notice I left the room too. I stood. Not aggressively. Just enough to finally look her in the eyes without flinching. Then why didn't you leave? Why did you let me think we still had a chance? Her jaw clenched. Because I didn't want to be the villain. But you are, I said softly. You are, Corinne. You just didn't want to carry the guilt. So you left the door open, waited for me to walk out first so you could tell people I gave up. Silence. The kind that strips a room bare. And then she said something I'll never forget. I was going to tell you, she whispered. I just needed one more weekend to be sure. One more weekend to what? I asked. Test drive your new life? She flinched. I think that hurt her. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because I'd finally stopped speaking like the version of me she'd gotten used to, the soft one, the quiet one, the man who didn't dare hold her accountable for anything. She reached for the back of the chair, steadied herself. "I don't love you the way I used to," she said. "I've tried. But it feels like we've become this polite arrangement." "And Wyatt?" I asked. Her silence answered. I nodded, lips tight, heartbreaking but eyes dry for the first time in weeks. I walked past her toward the hallway. She called out, "Dale, where are you going?" "To sleep in a bed that doesn't feel like a grave," I said. I didn't slam the door. I didn't curse. I didn't beg. I just let her sit there, alone in the dim kitchen light, surrounded by the consequences of her own choices. And for the first time since this all started, I realized something. I wasn't the one who left this marriage behind. She had. Long ago. I had just finally caught up to the truth. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was replaying the conversation, that tape had already worn itself thin, but because I finally saw it clearly, stripped of all the noise, all the justifications, all the nostalgia. What remained between us wasn't a relationship. It was a contract both parties had stopped reading years ago. We were just fulfilling obligations out of habit, out of fear of the empty space that follows. At around 6 a.m., I stood in front of the bedroom door for a long time. I didn't knock. I didn't go in. But I could hear her breathing on the other side. That slow, even rhythm of someone who doesn't know they've been found out. Or maybe someone who no longer cares. I almost wanted her to wake up and see me standing there, to ask what I was doing, why I hadn't come to bed, if I was okay. But the truth was, we were past that point. She didn't wake, and I didn't open the door. Instead, I went into the kitchen and brewed coffee in silence. The smell filled the apartment like it always did, and for a moment, the routine almost tricked me into thinking things were fine. But then I looked at the empty dining table, the one where we used to share weekend breakfasts, crosswords, lazy conversations about nothing, and it felt like a prop from a life that belonged to someone else. She came out of the bedroom sometime after 7, her hair still tangled from sleep, wearing one of my old t-shirts like she used to when she cared what I thought. Her eyes flicked over me like I was just another fixture in the room. No hello. No apology. Just a glance, a shrug, and then she moved to the fridge. "You didn't sleep," she said flatly. "I didn't need to," I replied, not looking up from my mug. We stood in silence for a while. I thought maybe she'd say something, anything, to acknowledge the night before. But she didn't. She just poured orange juice into a glass and leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone. The same thumbs that once brushed against my skin now swiped strangers' stories like they were more interesting than the person standing 3 feet away. I cleared my throat. "Are you planning to stay here long term?" She didn't look up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I need to know if I should start looking for another place." That finally got her attention. She paused, her screen lighting her face in cold blue. "You're moving out?" "I think one of us should," I said. "And I don't want to be here anymore." A long breath escaped her. She didn't argue, didn't fight. She just nodded like she'd expected this part to come eventually, like it was a train she saw in the distance weeks ago. "I can go," she said. "You sure?" I asked, even though part of me wanted to scream, "Why do you get to leave the mess you made?" "I'll pack some things today. Stay at Luna's for a bit." Of course. Luna. The same friend who giggled in the background of those photos. The one who covered for her, posted filtered memories, and liked every flirtatious comment. Birds of a feather. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Not anymore. Those tears had already come and gone in private. As she turned toward the bedroom, she hesitated. "Dale." I looked up. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something important, something real, but all that came out was, "You should eat something today." That was it. That was her parting wisdom. After years of marriage, of late-night talks and road trips and anniversary dinners and scraped knees and whispered dreams, that was what she offered me. I watched her disappear into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind her. And I sat there, alone, watching the sun rise through the blinds, painting golden lines across the coffee steam. For the first time in months, I felt something close to clarity. She had already left me long before Wyatt showed up. All he did was show her the exit sign. And now that she'd finally walked through it, I realized the silence she left behind wasn't scary anymore. It was freedom. The kind that doesn't come with a big speech or dramatic exit. Just a quiet cup of coffee, a final glance, and the realization that sometimes, letting go isn't the hardest part. It's the part where you stop waiting for them to come back. It's been 5 weeks since she left. The apartment feels different now. Not empty, just cleared. Like someone took down the scaffolding and let the building breathe for the first time in years. Her perfume doesn't linger on the couch cushions anymore. Her keys no longer rattle in the bowl by the door. The silence that used to choke me now feels like space I get to fill on my own terms. I thought the end would feel more like a crash, like glass shattering or sirens in the distance. But instead, it was more like fog lifting. Quiet. Gentle. Almost unnoticed at first. She came back once, a week after she left, to collect more of her things. She knocked instead of using her key. That small act, knocking, felt symbolic in a way. She knew she didn't belong here anymore. I opened the door, let her in, and watched her move through the space like a stranger. We didn't say much. She didn't cry. Neither did I. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "I'm sorry for how I handled everything. You didn't deserve that." I nodded. "I know." She waited, maybe hoping I'd offer something back. But I didn't, because I didn't owe her anything anymore. And I think she finally understood that. When the door shut behind her for the last time, I sat down and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. It didn't fix everything overnight. The pain didn't vanish. I still had nights where I replayed things in my head, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when love turned to routine, when loyalty turned into assumption. But it hurt a little less each time. And eventually, I stopped asking why. Because the answers don't matter when the person who gave them doesn't exist in your life anymore. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I rearranged the living room, bought new sheets, cooked meals I actually liked. One evening, I took a walk through the neighborhood park, something I used to do before marriage became my identity. I sat on a bench near the lake, watching the ducks fight over breadcrumbs, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not joy, not yet, but peace. And then, just as I was about to leave, a woman sat down on the other end of the bench. She had a sketch pad in her lap, headphones around her neck, and an iced tea bottle dangling from one hand. She smiled politely. "Mind if I draw the lake?" "Not at all," I said. We didn't talk much, just shared the moment. But when she stood up to leave, she tore out a small square from her pad, just a quick sketch of the water and the reeds, and handed it to me. "Thanks for the company," she said. I watched her walk away, then looked down at the paper. She'd signed her name at the bottom. Mallory. That little sketch is on my fridge now. Not because it meant something huge, but because it reminded me that endings aren't always disasters. Sometimes, they're just reroutes. Sometimes they're quiet little nudges toward places you never knew you needed to go. I don't know what happens next. I'm not healed, not entirely. But I'm not broken either. I'm not waiting anymore. Not looking back. Sometimes, the window opens only after the door slams shut. And this time, I'm stepping through it. On my own. Finally. Free.